Hey, hello all. Thanks for joining. Good morning, good evening. I know people joined across time zones, so thanks for joining this webinar today. As you all know, this is the second episode in the series of 6 webinars. We started with what RevOps is, and today we'll be focusing more on the market mix modeling topic. So a quick introduction. I am Mohana Brugubanda, Senior Vice President at Polestar Solutions. I head the technology and software industries at Polestar. With me, my co-host for the evening would be, for the morning would be Parikshit, who is our Chief Data Scientist and AI Leader. Cool. So quickly, we have a few people definitely joining from our episode. So thanks for continuing your participation. And we have also some new folks joining as well for this episode. So for that, what we have done is the idea is we'll take a quick minute to do a recap of what we have presented in our previous episode, mostly on RevOps, the definition of RevOps, why RevOps, etc. And then we will take a delve deeper into the marketing function, right? How the channels have been evolved over the last few years, what new challenges that brought to the industry as a whole, primarily on the B2B SaaS industry, and what are the key metrics we will be tracking, and also the solution, right? We talk about challenges and the solution, how a AI-driven market mix model can be a solution for some of the challenges from the multi-channel marketing. And then we have a Q&A at the end. So please feel free to type in your questions in the chat window so that we can consolidate all the questions and answer at the end of the webinar. So that saying that, we'll jump into the topic. We'll do a quick recap on what we have covered last time, right? So last time, our focus was on introducing revenue operations, because revenue operations has been gaining popularity, right, since I would say post-pandemic, because the emergence of a lot of SaaS companies, the exponential growth of a lot of SaaS companies brought in the need of how we can have a unified effort from all the revenue-related activities, right, towards the same goal of driving revenues, right? Hence, the revenue operations took birth. It's nothing but every company has marketing, sales, and customer success, right? Revenue ops is bringing all these functions under one umbrella, right, with the goal of driving revenue growth, right, enhancing process efficiencies, and then improving customer experience. Right, in a nutshell, that's what revenue operations is, right? And then we said, why revenue ops? Like, what is the advantages of having a revenue operations in an organization? These are the key things, right? Key pillars of revenue ops, like team alignment. Definitely, you create a seamless customer journey from lead gen to customer retention, and then customer success and experience. That gives you a seamless customer journey. And then definitely data-driven decisions, which we will talk about a bit in detail when we talk about AI-driven modeling. And then collaboration. So the revenue ops, when multiple teams work towards the same goal, it breaks down the silos between the departments and functions, right? And there is a lot of collaboration and process efficiencies that come into play. That will lead to a very good quality customer experience, if you know the customer from a holistic standpoint, you will be able to provide that kind of a white glove service to your customer. So it improves customer experience and in turn, customer loyalty, satisfaction and loyalty, right? And then the fifth one is scale, right? So we probably might not directly connected it, but with the exponential growth of SaaS companies, right? The processes and workflows should be such a way that they can be the scale of growth, the rate at which the companies are growing. So RevOps will now creating that scale, right? So these are the few of the things why RevOps. And also talked about in our last episode about some of the AI use cases that plastered across the channel, right? That can be from awareness to retention, meaning how can you create a customized content, customized using a Gen AI application, or how can you optimize your SEOs, right? How can you do a campaign attribution, etc., to all the way to having a good pricing engine, right? And also having a good churn prediction, and how can we increase your customer lifetime value? There are a lot of use cases that RevOps can or AI can help in the RevOps journey. So in a nutshell, this is what we have covered in our episode 1. Now we are all caught up. So let's move on to the topic of discussion today, right? Which is, we'll be focusing, as I said, a lot more on the marketing side of things. So in that context, right? See, if you see over the last few years where digitization has picked up speed, similarly, the marketing channels have changed a lot, right? In the old days, you have the cold calling, trade shows, direct print advertisement, etc., etc. But with the newer and digital channels coming in, you have more marketing you are doing on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, a lot of influencer marketing, podcasting, etc. There are now a plethora of channels that you want to engage your customer on, right? If you see the graph on the right-hand side, it's a big list of marketing channels, right? It's good that there are multiple ways to connect your customer, but also it poses some challenges to the B2B SaaS companies. We'll discuss that in a bit. So moving on, right? Then with the exploration of our plethora of marketing channels that are available, that brings up some challenges, right? Which is channel attribution and messaging, right? When you're interacting your prospects with multiple touch points and multiple channels, right? How do you attribute a sale to a particular campaign you run on this digital channel versus some other offline channel? Channel attribution is definitely one. And then the messaging, right? In the previous world, you have fewer channels, so you can do a watertight messaging. With the plethora of the personas might be different across channels, right? So how do you maintain a consistent brand messaging across channels? And then channel complexity and ROI, because budgets are limited, right? You don't have unlimited resources that I can spend it on all the channels, same amount, and see what happens. So there is a limited budget that all marketing organizations have to work with. So they're like, which channel should I spend more on, right? Am I over investing in a channel, or am under investing in a channel, right? And also these channels are quickly evolving. How to keep up with the technology updates as well, right? What are the best practices on each channel? So that's one. So we'll definitely cover this topic. And then a balanced marketing plan, right? Because there is a give and take on doing some aggressive short-term marketing tactics versus a long-term strategic initiatives, right? How can you have a balance between, yes, we need immediate customers, but also it should not be at a cost of hurting the brand value of the company as a whole? How do you balance these? So these are some of the key challenges that industry faces today, right? And then going on to the next topic, like these are the challenges, but how the industry as a whole, B2B SaaS industry as a whole, how you measure success or measure you are doing well on these parameters or not, that brings up to a topic of key metrics, right? You guys might be familiar with a lot of these. I'll just read through that. So definitely, first and foremost is, as you already know, customer acquisition costs are really high in the B2B SaaS environment. You put a lot of, I think, simple, if you take an example, on average, it's around $800 to $1,200 per customer or so, right? So how do we make sure that this customer stays longer so that we'll break even and also make profits on the customer? And then the lifetime value. Again, these are very much connected. What is the total revenue expected from a customer over the entire relationship with the company, right? Similarly, what is investment? We're talking in terms of the profitability of the marketing efforts, right? It's as simple as what is the net profit that we got whatever services we sold through this channel versus the cost of investment, right? And then your conversion rate, right? What are my lead conversion rate on a channel, right? And then definitely return on ad spend. Again, it's tying it all up into like what an ROI, right? What is the specific, if I spend $1 on advertising on a specific channel or as a whole, what is the investment, return on investment I got on the marketing spend? And then the last one is definitely, and there are tons of other metrics. We thought these are the key ones, so we pointed out here. Definitely a churn rate. We have another episode coming up focusing on the churn analytics and churn prediction, because that's a very relevant and important topic in this industry, because as you see, right, its industry is more on subscription based, right? It used to be multi-year, it came to single year, now it's already even going on monthly subscriptions in some cases. So in those kind of scenarios, right, how do you keep your customers, right? How do you retain your customer, keep your customers happy, etc.? So in a nutshell, right, we feel that these are the 6 key metrics that all the B2B SaaS companies are tracking today. And then with a AI-based solution, now if I take a step back, right, now we have, because of the multi-channel, different ways you approach a customer, you have channels on where to allocate my budget, what to do, decrease my customer acquisition cost, how can I retain my customer longer. So the solution to, I would say not most of them, but definitely majority of the challenges is definitely an AI-enabled marketing solution, right? If you see here, right, this is a use case we have implemented at one of our B2B SaaS customer, where we were able to use a marketing/analytics-based approach to help them reduce the CAC and increase the MROI. So if you go on the back end of this use case, right, you have data coming from multiple channels. The first one foremost is how do you get the data, how do you make sure that the data quality is there, etc. That's the exercise that happens behind the scenes for any AI project. Once the data is in shape, then you create the algorithms, you train the algorithm with the historical data and try to predict what's going to happen, what channel is going to give you good returns, etc. So that was pretty much the gist of this case, but also we will go into detail when Parikshit covers Profit Pulse solution, how we help customers across industries to make the informed decisions on marketing spend. Cool. Again, looking at the results, right? Again, our poll results are definitely very much in line of the pulse of the industry as well, because AI or Gen AI or these kind of terms are pretty new in the industry. So people are definitely exploring a lot of new AI solutions. So that would be a perfect segue for Parikshit to introduce Profit Pulse and what it is about and how we are helping customers with this AI-enabled solution. Parikshit, over to you.
Thanks, Mona, for the great introduction. I think we learned a lot about how marketing is quite challenging in the B2B SaaS world, the kind of challenges which we face, and the problems which are also called upon. So with that, a very good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone who's joined in this call, wherever you are. So with this, I would want to introduce ProfitPulse.ai, which is basically our end-to-end NRM solution, which we have built to help businesses across various different functional and vertical integration pieces. On to the next slide. So I'll very quickly introduce how we are leveraging AI to optimize for revenue management and enable that it runs smoothly across organizations. And I'll take a few minutes to actually walk through some of the challenges which we're also trying to solve for. If you look at any organization, marketing spends is a key factor which helps influence customers to actually buy something, right? There are promotions which are running across various different media channels, which we'll cover in a bit more detail moving forward. There are prices, and there are also BTL schemes or below the line schemes, which go into influencing users or some distributors to actually buy certain products. It's more about saying that, hey, could you buy this particular license? But if I give a reseller maybe a 10% or a 15% incentive to actually push for that product, then they would work even harder to sell that particular license, right? So that's what BTL is. For the non-digital space, the once you actually have the plans put in place for promotions which are out there, it's more towards engaging the consumers to buy it. But how do these goods actually reach the consumers more in an offline space is where forecasting is actually required, where we have a solution which is more about understanding the various impacts of various different levers and forecasting to ensure that the right demand comes in place, more relevant for the offline world, as I just said. And the last part is about ensuring that the right trade and the right sales routes are ensured. We know which salesman needs to sell which particular product in which particular region, given the kind of marketing incentives which are actually running, the kind of PTL schemes or trade schemes which are actually running for that particular salesman to push that particular license in that particular space. So setting the right target for the right salesman in the right region actually helps us land the final sales, which basically converts into the last mile revenue which comes into the account for any organization. So that's the end-to-end thought process on saying that how do we build one particular solution to tackle all of these different problems horizontally. We'll focus more on the marketing mix modeling part. Mona, next slide, please. Yep, and this is how it actually fits back in together to say that how do we actually set the right targets. If you look at all the different levers like we just talked about, we have the baseline sales, which basically means that no matter what you're actually selling, there will be certain sales which will anyway happen without any promotions. And then there are levers which one can control in order to incentivize the consumers and the resellers to actually buy the product. That can happen through pricing to say that, hey, let me give a price cut for this particular product. How does competition behave is also key, and building in that impact is very critical. The next part is around the BTL schemes, like we mentioned. And then there is a piece on the media and the marketing spends, which we actually do. So in keeping these levers in mind, we actually have that entire cycle to say that how do you attribute the right impact of price and promotion? How do you design the right kind of promotion schemes? And how do you track it and set the right budget accordingly? And this vicious cycle continues. When we talk about some of the other key features, hey, Mohana, can we go back to the next slide?
Yeah.
Last slide. Sorry. So some of the key features which actually sets us apart is about saying that how do we set the right competition, the right price against competition? Because there are two think of a situation where there are two companies selling the same kind of product, but their pricing differential usually is more symbolic of how are they positioning themselves. Are they positioning themselves? Is competition A positioning itself as a more premium product as compared to maybe our own company? Then they would actually try to look towards charging a premium against it, and we would have to price our product to a certain. We would want to under-index our price against that particular product. But what is the right ratio to actually maintain or optimize for sales while not losing out on margins is what the right strategic price index is. And that's what we also help companies identify in the digital space. Then there is a target and payout design to say that, hey, if you say like the sales part, which I just mentioned about saying that, hey, if you sell X number of licenses, we'll pay you this much, this Y dollars as a compensation. But how do you determine what is X and what is Y? It has to be marketing driven, because there are various other factors which also influence sales, right? Your baseline numbers could be pretty high given that you're actually a good product. That would actually lower the incentives which are actually paid out because it's easier to sell. But if it's a difficult product to sell, then the incentives would be higher. But where do you actually draw the line? How do you quantify it? Is what this target and payout design scheme actually helps us understand. Then there is a part around budget optimization, which is the most tricky part. To say that we have so many levers which we can play around with. Even in the media space, there are so many digital campaigns which are running. There are several different ways in which you could actually spend on media in terms of paid search, in terms of ads, in terms of campaigns plus. How do you understand and decide where to actually spend what amount in order to maximize your sale so that you don't lose out on the right ROI which you're looking to gain out. That's where the state-of-the-art budget optimization framework, which we have built using Bayesian frameworks, come into play. And the last two parts are more around tracking and ensuring that we don't lose out on sales given recommendations are going, so that the momentum which is built in on the back end is something which also hits the front line, so that people know what kind of sales they are doing and what kind of ROI are they actually achieving. And when they are not hitting the right pieces, the right kind of alerts also come in. And this works with, and we can also integrate various different external data from the likes of Shopify, Amazon, SAP, SAP, etc., to ensure that the data richness goes back into the model and we have the right external data parameters also fed in, which is a very key differentiator which we bring through this product. The next slide, please, Mona. So yeah, when we talk about marketing mix modeling now, so we have always known marketing mix modeling to be a log linear regression function which throws out one elasticity, which basically, and that also comes with various different challenges in terms of multicollinearity, which is basically about saying that you can't feed in too many variables which are interrelated to each other. There's a curse of dimensionality, which basically means that if you don't have enough data points, you might have to drop a few variables or levers, and that never bodes well with the business. And the point around 1 point elasticity is always frowned upon, because we know that when you're actually changing maybe your spends on TV from maybe $100,000 to $110,000, the impact is going to be different. But when it's at $1 million moving to 1.1 million, which is still a 10% increase in the spends which we are doing, that's extremely different. And the impact which you'll see is going to be non-linear. So which is why we've created these state-of-the-art non-linear, non-parametric response curves, which are not fitted manually based on design. They're automatically adjusted, and that's how it actually comes about, to say that there might be multiple inflection points which may come about. There may be values where if you spend enough, you might not see any uplift in terms of spends which we're doing. Then the second part is about measuring or isolating the right impact of the various different levers, to say that how much impact would come from the different levers which we are actually putting in, which is basically share of effect, and versus how much are we actually spending against it. So say we are spending $100, how is that split across the various different media channels which we have, versus if we are actually selling $200, how is that actually divided between the various different levers which we have, and how are they attributed back to it. So basically, any case where we see that the share of effect is greater than the share of spends, it ideally means that we have a positive ROI coming through, versus, and vice versa, when it's actually negative. And the last part is about saying that when you have so many different combinations of spends which are coming in terms of marketing, in terms of pricing, in terms of BTL spends, how do you actually optimize this in the right manner, given that you have a limited budget or you have a limited target in mind? How do you optimize it to ensure that the right spends are allocated to the right particular channel? That's where our core marketing mix modeling engine Neptune comes in, and we'll see a demo very soon for the same. The next slide.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So over here we also have the capability to, like we spoke about, we have the capability to simulate the spends which we would want to do, and this gives any marketing manager the visibility of playing around with data to say that, hey, if I actually want to maybe increase my spends of digital or TV by X percentage, what kind of uplift could I expect to see? What is my current ROMI or return on marketing investment, versus what would be the revised ROMI which I would get if I actually make a change in a particular spend. And this gives the marketing team a huge amount of visibility on where they should actually spend, and it also gives them the opportunity to get their hands dirty, play around with the numbers, and see what kind of uplifts they would see before taking the right decision. And that would obviously be a much more structured decision, given that it's actually data backed, and it would be much more robust and effective as well. And we'll see a lot more about this when we actually get into the demo. Next slide, please. So cool. So we know that marketing mix modeling exists. It's been there since donkey's years. People have been building and evolving throughout this particular piece. So what sets us apart? How is Profit Pulse different? So the first part is it's the first non-linear, non-parametric marketing mix modeling engine which we have, and it's way more advanced than any other Bayesian or frequentist engine which actually exists in the market today. Second is the speed to market or speed to delivery, which we actually have to say that if you look at any typical marketing mix modeling project, it's usually a 3 to 6 months roadmap which goes into building these pieces out. And what happens in that particular piece is that a lot of recency gets lost in the particular process. If there is something which basically happened over the last 1 or 2 months and which might actually shift the way the market actually behaves. Let's just take a very unique example of how, I'll take this example from the Indian market, how there was a brand called Fog, which basically came into the market, into the deodorants market, and completely disrupted the market, which was actually held, where the market leader Axe actually held 40% plus market share, and in 2 or 3 years drove it out of the country, and it's nowhere to be seen in terms of market share at all. So that's how a new brand came in with a product disruption and completely ate into the particular setup which was there, the current setup which was there for that particular category. So that helps us understand how if adoption is actually slow for any particular market change which is happening, how does it actually impact any player? And that's what Axe found out in a hard way, right? These kind of speed to action comes into be very critical. And given that we have a fully automated engine with minimum TAT and minimum touch which needs to go into it, we can basically keep running this even on a week-to-week basis if that requirement comes into play. More relevant for the digital space, not for relevant for the traditional media space, but it can be customized based on what the requirements are. And then we have a setup where we can actually run the models at the lowest granularity at which decisions can be taken. If there are decisions taken at a city level, at a channel level, down to an SKU, if there are different marketing campaigns running for different SKUs and products, that can be brought down to that level to ensure that the right set of optimization is done at the lowest possible granularity to ensure that the information which is actually going in is actually crisp. The next slide, please. Cool. This is again one of the trade schemes which we did, which is for the BTL marketing piece for one of the largest adhesive brands in India, where we saw an increase in ROI for about 10% and reduced the loss, opportunity loss down to 0 with the right uplift tracking. The next slide, please, Mona.
It's a demo.
Cool. I'll just share my screen for the demo. Is my screen visible?
Coming up. Yes, now it's visible.
Wait, let me just.
Cool. Yes, Parikshit, now it's visible.
Awesome. Thank you. So, hey, so now what I'll do is I'll walk you through the demo of what Profit Pulse is. So we'll start off with a very quick introduction and an imaginary scenario for electronics company which we have, which basically, this is the CEO dashboard which we have, which basically just calls out the growth and the channel contribution and the category contribution for various different numbers. The key point which we would want to showcase here is that we've seen a dip in sales happening over the last quarter. And this is something which is obviously not very conducive or very enriching for any CEO to actually look at, right? And the basic question which comes up in anyone's mind is to say that how do we actually reverse this particular trend? How do we make sure that we can actually change this particular setup that we have today? It has a Gen AI setup put in place as well, and I can maybe help you with a demo of this particular thing. Just hope that the internet holds on today. So now if I just want to maybe understand what is the performance of my company in the last quarter. So you would see the right analysis coming up with the growths, the detailed analysis at a category level. We also have the watch outs being called out, saying that what's sold, what's not sold, and what's actually dipped the most, and who has the maximum market share. And this can directly be emailed to any user or any particular individual through the email integrations which we have. Now, moving on to the next part, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we wanted to do a demo of the marketing mix modeling piece. So if I step into the role of a CMO now, and the ask comes in from the CEO to say that, hey, I want to reverse my trends. I don't think it's looking positive. What kind of marketing interventions can I actually take to ensure that we actually reverse or buck this particular trend, right? So if we look at this particular graph now, on the left-hand side, we see that for camera, where we saw that the problem area was, we see that the forecasted sales is also going down over the next quarter. And that's even more worrisome for any individual to look at. And we see that the total allocated marketing budget that he actually had was around 212 million. And the projected sales from that is around 453 million. And the return on marketing investments is somewhere at around 2.13 is what we have. I'll walk you through some of the output which we actually see out here. So if you look at the top right chart over here, is my cursor visible or is it not?
Yeah, it is.
It is cool. Awesome. So you see that the response curves which we generate now for various different levers, and you can imagine this to be any of the digital levers as well. We just have it for some of the digital and traditional media pieces out here. We see that the response curves are extremely non-linear. It's not bounded by the fact that it's just following one set of elasticity. If you look at the response curve for sponsorship, it basically says that while you grow from 10 to 20 million, but from 20 to 60 million, you will still not see too much of an uplift. But then when you move beyond 60 million, that's when you see that the curve picks up again. And that's where you're currently operating at this point in time. So this kind of an insight is usually not possible through some of the traditional marketing mix modeling setup which we have today. And then we have simpler pieces like the digital spends where we know that there is one point of inflection which is coming through. So how to read this is basically about saying that if you spend about 4 million, what kind of uplift would you get out of it, which basically means that you'd get around 2.3 million of attributed sales if you actually spend 4 million out here. On the bottom left chart, the marketing channel, it's basically the channel-wise budget allocation which we have today. It's more about saying that in the current setup, how is the 212 million spent across the different marketing mix channels which we have today, and we'll see how can we actually optimize this better in the subsequent steps. And this is the share of spend versus share of effect chart which we have for this current setup, as we spoke about during the presentation. Now, assume that we have the requirement to maybe increase sales to 500 million over the next quarter, which is basically a 50 million delta over the current sales that we see today. So we can just call on our optimizer, set the sales target, and just with one click, we can see what the forecasted sales would look like, what the revised ROMI would look like. And interestingly, we see that we might not even need the 200 million budget, which was actually put in place. And we can achieve the amount of 500 million with an estimated budget of around only 121 million, which basically also means that our return on marketing investment would increase from a 2.13 to a 4.1. And how is that happening? If you look at it, this is how the revised spends have been attributed. So it becomes very easy for the marketing manager to just directly push this to their activations team and get this thing going. So it's just a one-click thing, and they can obviously deep dive into it and understand how this is happening. So there are a lot of explainable tools which we have in the back end, which also helps any technically inclined person to maybe look at how these numbers are coming about. And we can see that this is the revised forecast, which is also being generated with the revised spends which we actually have. And this is on the response curve. We can also look at what the optimal budget would look like. Now, as I spoke about earlier, we also have a simulator which basically tells us to say that, hey, what will happen if I actually want to move to this inflection point? If I maybe want to move to spend a 4.47 million, right? So if I do it, so this is what I would want to maybe spend and see what kind of ROI can I actually get. So what it does is it actually gives us a revised forecast. It gives us a simulated ROMI, the kind of amount which we actually get if we get to this point. And it would also help us understand where do we actually stand in terms of spends. So it can be done individually as well as holistically to understand that what would be the ideal spends which I need to do, versus if I want to play around with some of the optimized numbers, I can do that to maybe increase my ROMI for a particular channel as well. And that can be done by individual marketing managers as well. So this now goes into, and this can also be done via GenAI as well. I mean, you could just directly type a query and get some of these results out. So suppose if I maybe say, let's say I want to optimize my media spends if I want to achieve a target of maybe 5% increase in sales for camera. Well, here I'm not specifying the amount, I'm just saying that I want to see an increase. Let's hope the internet holds on. Yep. So it gives you the sales target which you're looking at, what kind of spends need to be done, what total spends, how would it need to be adjusted, what kind of, where do you need to increase, where do you need to decrease, and the same chart comes across here as well. So it can be done via natural language as well in this particular process. Cool. I had a couple more modules around supply chain and sales, but I wouldn't get into it because we wanted to talk more on the marketing mix modeling part. And in the interest of time, I would hold on to this. Back to you, Mona.
Thanks, Parikshit. This is really amazing. And like, just change the sales budgets, or we can buy the channel, you can adjust it. And I'm assuming maybe down the line, you can do it by the product as well, or you still do it by the product, by channel as well, right? This is pretty amazing stuff. Cool. No, thank you so much for walking us through the Profit Pulse. Great. Thanks, Parikshit. I really appreciate your time and taking time to answer the questions. I think looks like that's all we have for now, questions wise. So the next topic, the next episode in this series would be focusing more on customer churn. Like we talked about, because the cost of acquisition of the customers are so high in B2B SaaS companies, the importance of retaining the customers is even higher, right? So we will dwell deeper into that. How do we do that? What are the challenges today? Like what companies are doing to retain their customers, etc. So stay tuned. So the next webinar will be on September 11th at 11 a.m. Eastern. Again, thanks a lot for joining, and Parikshit, thank you for your insights and walking us through the Profit Pulse product.
Thank you so much, Mona. Thanks, everyone.